Hello. um, I thought on popping in here to talk about a topic that I find it so interesting, and I hope you do too. Um, a little bit of context. One of the reasons that I find it very interesting is because I've witnessed both of the worlds or both sides firsthand. And what I am referring specifically is the Anglo versus the Latin world, or the North versus the South world, or, you know, I don't know. Um, yeah, Anglos versus Latin, North versus South, West versus Global South, or however they call it in politics. Um, but the trigger here was a very tiny clip I saw on, I think he's Sneeko, or something along those lines. He's interviewing Nick Fuentes, and I don't even know if it's in his channel or not, or whatever. The thing is, they are basically having dinner, and then Sneeko asks Nick Fuentes, well, like who are, or something along the lines of like, who are the white people of this country, or like which whites are you referring to, or like something along those lines. I don't specifically remember. And then Fuentes clarifies and says like, well, those are the people from Europe, so the whites are the people from Europe. And then he goes to even clarify further, saying, and and specifically from Northern Europe. And I thought that was, such an interesting observation. And the reason why I say that is because there is indeed a very big distinction between Northern Europeans and Southern Europeans, or, kind of like, yeah, people like countries that are in the south of Western Europe, or not even Western Europe, because Greece would be part of that southern part, and I don't know if it's in Western Europe or in Eastern Europe. But anyways, I thought that the extinction is super interesting because it's something that we've seen reflected all the way until now without us really knowing that there is that distinction so vibrantly living underneath us all in a way. And as an immigrant coming from a South American country into a Northern country, I can guarantee that is a very, very different type of mindset. That of the Anglos, that's how I usually call them. Obviously there are way much more, ethnicities and cultures than just the Anglo. But just, for the sake of this conversation, we can kind of like use that term as an umbrella for everything that is Northern Europe, and the settlements that they have around the world. So Australia, for instance, even though it's in the southern hemisphere, would be part of that Western world under that Anglo-Saxon umbrella that I'm mentioning. But going back to what I was saying, as an immigrant from Argentina, I am telling you that difference is so real, because the mindset between one culture and the other culture, so the one culture being the Anglo and then the other culture being the Latin, it's day and night. It's crazy. It's crazy. Even though, there is even a bigger umbrella that goes underneath all of this, where we share, Roman law, Christian, Judeo-Christian values and religion, and like a worldview in a way. However, there are nuances, and when you get to like in the field, you can experience them very, very easily. So that comment from Nick Fuentes, although it could somehow um, sound a little bit. I want to say no. I, I want to say a little bit. Mm, yeah. All right. Whatever. Never mind. Because the word doesn't come to mind. But yeah, that comment. Uh, I think that comment is basically reflecting something that it has been happening for centuries, and I'm sure there's a lot of other people that have talked about this, philosophers that have talked about this, historians that have talked about this, um, but in everyday life and in modern society, um, you can kind of like see these two worlds, and you can experience these two worlds in a way that is very obvious. So, for instance, just to give you an example of how these divide, like these kind of like mindsets, and I call them mindsets because to me the way that I experience them are definitely mindsets. So, um, the Anglo-Saxon way of living, in my personal experience, is more creative. All right? We're not talking about Picasso here. We're talking about like everyday creativity, problem solving skills, about liberties, certain liberties, about pushing boundaries, about thinking outside the box. The Anglo-Saxon way is way much more creative than the Latin way. The Latin way is very much authoritarian. You just follow the rule, you just follow the leader, you just kind of like follow how always has been done. There is this kind of like thing where, well, this is the way that it have always been done, so we just do it this way. But we can solve it easily if we just try this other portion. No, it's like no. To any American that has moved to Mexico, I can assure you that you are living that daily. I mean, it's just like all the no's, right? Like, no, you can do that. No, that this is gonna be done. No, no, and it's like, give me a break. Why not? Why cannot we just pay with 5 credit cards if we want to? Like, oh no. So yeah, I think that's one of the main I would say differences between these two worlds. The other big difference between Anglo-Saxons and Latins is the pragmatism that the Anglo world has over the very detailed, I don't know if detail is the word, maybe it's not the word, but Anglos to me are very pragmatic, like very practical, right? Like there's always like a formula, a method, a way of doing things, and that makes life very easy. There's always like a manual that has bullet points or steps, or like troubleshooting situations where you can like if this goes south, then you can kind of like put in motion or in action these two other things, and then you can kind of like amend whatever is not working. Whether I think for the Latin, in the Latin world, is more about like acceptance, kind of like, all right, well, this is happening, and then we just kind of like live it and like go through it, and we just leave the drama, and then we just kind of like cry and like, or we laugh, or we, kind of like live a little bit more the moment. And that's the good thing about the Latin culture. I think that the Anglo doesn't have, like, not that doesn't have it, let me rephrase that, but it just has it differently, right? But definitely the Latin world is a lot of emotions that, kind of like sisterhood, brotherhood, that kind of like friendships, strong ties and friendships, to roots that very, the longevity of the relationships, I guess. I think that's one of the difference too, at the time of putting the two together, like comparing one with the other one. But yeah, I mean, I'm already 10 minutes into this, and I think I just wanted to touch base on this very quickly before the idea kind of like just got lost in my mind, because this is something, as I said, that I think about it very, very often, and that I have suffered. I had to go through such a huge transformation when I moved into this country, starting with school, right? That was my first, kind of like endeavor here when I moved to New York. It was, going to school, and in a moment I realized that I needed to kind of like really do a mindset shift to be able to keep up with how they were teaching. Like, I wasn't understanding anything, basically. And since then, that was 2007, I have been, kind of like spotting and taking mental notes of these differences between the Anglos and then the Latin. When I say Latin, I mean everything that is, kind of like Latin influence, like not specifically South America. I'm referring basically to culture, right? Like that culture that comes from Rome and that has those Romance languages, which is Spain, France, Portugal. So that's Latin for me, right? That kind of like culture versus the more of the Germanic languages and influence, which is all the Northern Europe, Scandinavian countries, Germany, England, and Belgium and Netherlands, whatever. Anyways, I thought it was very interesting. I just wanted to talk about that quickly before it slipped, just disintegrated in my mind. But I would love to do something that is kind of like a more specific and with more research about this, than rather just like me talking about my own experiences, because I think this is definitely something universal. All right, well, I hope I was articulated, or at least that's what I'm aiming for, and that I was also, I'm getting, like, I hope that this was well said, well expressed. Thank you, and Happy New Year for everyone. Au revoir.